much.
Well, if you want to do something where the press really won't cover it, you do it late night on a Friday night, and that appears to be what the White House did last night. President Obama signing an executive order, which would now give the government sort of sweeping power over its climate change policies. Now, what does that mean? That means that the infrastructure related to forest fires, flooding, any sort of big storm is now going to be given over to 7 governors, all Democrat, by the way, except for one Republican governor from Guam. So all Democratic governors in charge of this, who will now be able to dole out money and force other businesses to change their structures based on climate change.
All of this coming on the heels of Superstorm Sandy. No, of course, when you're living in New York and you hear something like, well, there may be better infrastructure, there may be more money being put to infrastructure, well, it comes at a cost. Let's remember that.
Well, and critics are saying, wait a second, how can you lump together forest fires with rising sea levels in one sort of government
it's not
task
just
force?
critics, it's scientists. I love watching members of Congress pose as scientists. The truth is the climate hasn't risen in the past. Temperatures have not risen in the past several years. They've gone down, and there's, in fact, an emergent scientific consensus that we may be in for a period of global cooling caused not by greenhouse gases, but by fluctuations in solar energy, sunspots. So
well,
the truth is we don't know.
And
and by the way, they disagree. Not only disagree, anybody who expresses any kind of scientific skepticism is dismissed as like a denier, like you're a Holocaust denier or something. You're a crazy person. You're evil. The truth is the core of science is inquiry, asking questions, but that's not allowed.
Well, they haven't been able to also, when government gets involved in this, they haven't been able to reduce the emissions that they tried to do so far. They haven't been able to reduce the 2% in carbon dioxide emissions that they set about in their goals so far. They want a 17% reduction by 2020. Good luck with that. You have to get car makers on board with that. You're going to have to force the hand of all of these manufacturers of air conditioning units, on and on. They say, though, that, look, over the past 12 years, we've seen the hottest years on record in the past 15 years. 12 of the hottest years on record.
Why has it gotten cooler in the last several years? That's not one crackpot's opinion. This is a fact. It's measurable. Now, maybe there's a solution that's consistent with their theories, but you can't tell me that global warming is destroying the Earth when we have more ice in the Arctic than we had 5 years ago.
Well, when you have the president going out and saying to the American people, definitively, this is what's happening, it gets into people's heads. And
when they don't know definitively is the truth, and no one wants to admit, maybe there's some things we don't fully understand. Why not just admit that?
Well, and I'm most troubled by what small businesses are going to have to do. If you tell someone suddenly that they're going to have to change the interior insulation in their walls of their business, who's going to foot the bill for that? We've heard repeated stories on this show. The government comes in, hands them a new regulation. They have to raise their fence by 17 feet suddenly because
and then all of a sudden they're out of business.
And it's not rooted in science. It's not rooted in science. Congress shouldn't be messing around with things it doesn't understand.
Well, Congress likes to do that. Remember last week they pretended that they understood what the internet, how the internet worked. All right, coming up here.